let me grieve. Don't clothe my pain with your words of hope. Don't. Don't judge me with your eyes. Don't ask me to stop crying. Just let me grieve. See, death is an old tale on your lips, but death is a new tale on my lips. So just let me grieve. Let me drown in my fears. Let me soak in my tears. Let me crawl through the mud till I can walk again. Just let me be, please, just let me grieve. Let me stagger till I can walk again. Just let me cry, please. Just let me grieve. I wrote the poem 5 months after my mother's death. Because at the time, many people were calling me and asking me to take down my Facebook posts. Many people were telling me that I need to move on and I need to be strong. What they did not realize that actually they were bullying me into silence. My mom was everything any girl would want. She loved to sing. She loved stories. She was my best friend. She was my sister. She loved people. Our house was always full of people, like a marketplace, not a bad marketplace, a good marketplace, full of people, cats, songs, food. Basically, she was love. However, on August 22nd, 2014, I'm standing in Dubai, holding a phone, happy to tell my mother that I'm going to come back home the next day. In my suitcase, there's a lot of gifts for her. She liked arm bracelets. So my whole suitcase was full of arm bracelets. And then I'm on the phone and I'm like, hello. My brother picks it up and I say, can I speak to mommy? And she's like, and he said to me, Rashida? I said, yes, please put mommy on the phone. I want to speak to mommy. He said, Rashida, well, mommy died 2 days ago. And right now, we actually, from burying her, we've just returned home. So I close my eyes and I'm thinking, wow, this is such a bad joke. It's not April Fool's Day. I think you're lying. So please, can you put mommy back on the phone? And he says, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. We were scared. We didn't know how to tell you. We didn't know how you would take it. I'm just sorry. So the next day, I returned home to a fresh grave. Looking at this grave and I'm thinking, there lies my best friend. I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get to sing our last song together. I didn't get to tell her all about my trip. That was the very first time I was going to the US. I didn't get to tell her about all these things. But I knew that I could live through it. But I needed to talk. Because when you do not bury somebody you love, you want to talk about it. You want some closure. When you lose family, it's hard to talk to family because they've also just lost family. So you need somebody who has not lost somebody to talk to. I started to talk on Facebook. I put a lot about posts about how I felt about my mother. At first, people were kind. They said all nice words. Well, some were annoying, like move on, be strong, she's in a better place. But I knew that they came from a place of love. However, in my second week, people didn't want to hear it. I got a lot of inboxes and emails and people were telling me, please just move on. Just take those posts off Facebook. Stop being sad. You're being weak. You're being weak. You need to pick yourself up. And these were not just 1 or 2, 3 messages. They started actually turning into threats. People were calling me. People were cutting off deals with me. They were saying like, okay, we don't want, I think you're not well. We don't really want to work with you. See, I knew that it was going to be hard to live without my mom. What I never knew, what nobody warned me about, was that actually it was going to be hard to grieve for her. But actually, that my grieving was going to offend people. That's funny, right? Like, I was offending people because I was crying. The first The first few weeks, I budged. I took down the Facebook posts. I stopped crying, but that didn't work. I quickly fell into a depression. And at the peak of my depression, I had two choices. I either had to leave or die. If you've been depressed, you know that a lot of times you have a lot of suicidal thoughts. And grieving alone, there's only one option. You either end your life or leave. Living for me meant that I had to grieve, that I had to feel the pain, but I was not going to do this alone. So I decided three things for myself. One, every single day I was going to put up a Facebook post about how I felt. If I was angry, if I was happy, I was going to post it. If you didn't like it, just unfriend me. Two, I decided that I was going to cry. And I did cry. I cried everywhere. In offices, in taxis, on bus stops, in the taxi park. And don't ask me how people reacted. Well, shocked. That's how most people were like, why are you crying? Second, I decided that I was going to write down a story about how I felt, but put another character in that story. So if I was sad, I would write a character about somebody who was sad. What helped for me was I could observe what was happening to me from outside of me. Because when you're grieving, you cannot make sense of many emotions. So if you put it into another character, then you understand what's happening and you understand what's going on and you can embrace yourself more. This worked. After about 3 months, all the threatening posts turned into thank you notes. People were saying, thank you so much. Thank you for being courageous. Thank you for allowing us to experience what you're experiencing with your mother. Thank you. But what was actually happening, I was also getting a lot of inbox posts where they're saying, can you imagine this also happened to me and I could not talk to anybody? Can you imagine? So I just realized that it was just not me. I was not the only one who was being bullied. Many people were being bullied. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do something about this. And I started the Sophie Muwanika Institute of Art for Change in memory of my mom. She was called Sophie Muwanika. What the Institute basically does is I try to manipulate what helped me survive. And that is basically we allow people to talk and we turn these stories into other characters, into plays. When people step out of their bodies and they can see what is happening to them out of their bodies, they learn. See, when we are grieving, we're changing, we are changing. We can never be the same. And because we're trying so hard to cope, we forget to learn who we are becoming. So basically we end up confused with our new identities and frustrated. However, the Institute has helped so many people. We work with refugees, schools, and all over the people. But we cannot do this alone. It's just a small institute, and we need you. So why is it important? Why is it important that we cultivate a culture of talking about weakness, that we cultivate a culture of talking about grief, that we, in fact, embrace grief and weakness as a strength? This is why. A friend of mine said, majority of the most beautiful people are people who are grieving. And there's a quote about people who are reliable, beautiful, strong, are people who actually have gone through loss. But it's not a guarantee that everybody who goes through loss is going to end up strong, reliable, beautiful, and all those beautiful traits we want. In fact, most people who are struggling or have gone through something end up violent. In my line of work, I've been blessed to work with many people. I've worked with gang reformers, school bullies, returnees from violent extremist groups. And most of these people have confessed to me one thing. All of them come from a history of loss, struggle, and anger. Anger because everybody asked them to man up. Anger because everybody was so busy, nobody took notice that they were crying. Anger because there was no time to cry. How do you cry? You need to move on. But why not cry? Isn't it true that majority of us are always sad? Isn't it true that half of this room has gone through loss? So why do we keep brushing things that affect us under the carpet? Why do we let them to accumulate into anger? So that instead of crying, we are shedding blood. So that instead of crying, we are picking guns. So that instead of crying, we are breaking our homes, breaking our daughters, breaking our sons, breaking everything because we just simply want to cry and be listened to and speak up. So, bullying grieving people can start with you. Ending it can start with you too. And it's simple. From today onwards, if somebody is grieving, If somebody's dealing with loss, if you have no kind words to say, just listen. All they want is to listen. Because in my experience, I realized people who were bullying me the most were people who had actually gone through loss, meaning they had been bullied themselves, so it was a continuous cycle. People, I tell you, I've talked to a lot of returnees, and all of them are people who have lost people. All of them are people who have lost people. So, I want a commitment from you, because I want ending of bullying people who are grieving now. I want us to end the shame of people who are struggling right now. I want us to be able to appreciate that our weakness is our strength, because don't we all function on emotions anyway? So by show of hands, who wants to commit that from today onwards, they're not going to ask people who are grieving to move on? By show of hands, who commits that today from onwards, they're not going to ask people who are grieving to move on, to be strong, but they're going to encourage them to cry? By show of hands, people commit. We can end this, we can end the cycle of violence, because it all starts from suppressed emotions. I'm not having enough hands. By show of hands, by show of hands. Thank you. I hope that today we do understand the impact of telling people to move on, the impact of telling people to suppress their emotions, because suppressed emotions turn into anger, anger turns into violence, violence breaks, destroys every one of us. I hope it starts with you now, today. Thank you.